Good afternoon. Are you ready for our next keynote? Come on, you can do better than that. Are you ready for our next keynote? It's been a great Main Street Summit so far, and we're extremely thankful for all the community leaders, Team ND members, and students participating in the conference this year. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to introduce the next speaker. Jaixai Reineke is a freshman at Brookings High School in South Dakota. She has already, at a young age, dedicated her time and energy to bringing youth voices to the forefront of her community. Jaixai led, organized, and hosted the first ever youth-planned TEDx event in the history of South Dakota. She also was the first youth speaker at TEDx Brookings, with a focus on cultivating young pioneers. When we talk about youth engagement with the Main Street Initiative in North Dakota and how young people are the leaders of today rather than only of tomorrow, we think of young people like Jaixai. For the students still in the room, take a note from Jaixai and get engaged now. If you see challenges in your community, if you have ideas to make North Dakota a better place, jump in. Bring your ideas to life today. You know that you have supporters in your corner with Governor Burgum and I. So now, let's give the biggest Main Street welcome of all to Jaixai.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction. So, first impressions are everything. If I woke up this morning and threw on a t-shirt, forgetting that I was presenting, I'd probably come off as pretty disrespectful and rude. So on Monday, I actually had the opportunity to meet Governor Burgum for the first time. Sorry about the t-shirt. But in all fairness, I didn't expect to meet you on Monday, but now that I'm all dressed up, maybe we could have another picture of Governor Burgum after the event? So it's not always what you first say or what you're wearing that causes people to make judgments, but it's also age. For example, I had the chance to visit Italy this summer with my family. A popular and convenient mode of transportation happens to be the subways. So my family and I were scanning our tickets at the turnstile, waiting to enter, when an old man came frantically running up to us, pointing at me and screaming, "How old the baby? How old the baby?" So it turns out he thought I was under 8 years old and was trying to save my family money by telling us that I could ride free. My dad will never let me forget this, for he always teases me about my height. I happen to be short for my age, according to maybe 20, 30 people. Okay, well, maybe everyone I know, but I could have taken advantage of that situation. I'm not sure if this is how you see me, but I may seem young and inexperienced. I have much to learn and haven't seen the whole world yet. I don't understand certain things without undergoing certain milestones. What could you possibly learn from a child such as myself? Hello, everyone. I'm Jaixai Reineke of Brookings, South Dakota. I just entered high school as a freshman. And to make this clear, I'm 14, not 8. So I think everyone has at least one fear when they first enter high school. Whether this be based off of your personal experience entering high school or when your children entered high school, what do you think that might be? Anyone raise your hands? Any ideas? Yes, in the front? Being accepted, so being accepted by my peers. I think that's definitely a fear many people have. For me, that was not my biggest fear because I was able to get to know them in middle school. In the back? I'm sorry, may you speak up? Like a fight? Get into like a fight? Oh, getting picked on because of my height. Well, very possible for me. I hope I handled that well. But it's actually having to sit through a lecture I don't enjoy. What's worse is when people have to sit through your own presentation and you kind of just watch the energy drain from their face. I want to see people sitting on the edge of their chairs, excited, intrigued. So, when writing this down, it was constant, reread, rewrite, it's a never-ending cycle, spinning my head not quite right. So, I like to refer to myself as an activist. I stand up for the right for everyone's voice to be heard in any situation whatsoever. I like my voice to be heard through my poems, stories, and songs that I write, if you couldn't tell. Whether we sing, write, or just talk like any other normal person, we all use our voice to change something. We all use our voice to state our opinions and change others' opinions. By a show of hands, how many of you have used your voice to change something in your community? That's wonderful. Now, how about people who have done that in their youth? So, as you could see, there were a lot more people who have had the opportunity as adults. But maybe the people that have been able to do it as a youth were given an opportunity. I think in the general public, a lot of youth either aren't given this opportunity or they're unaware of the opportunities. So children, even myself, we are still forming our own opinions on different topics. We often look up to our parents or another role model and automatically agree with whatever they agree with. We learn not to question their opinions and automatically assume it's right. I think the only thing that younger people ever fight for is probably a later bedtime. But when it comes to political opinions or decisions such as new regulations being discussed in the community, adults usually agree to leave the child out of the conversation. They say things like, "The adults are talking," or "You wouldn't understand." But the only reason we don't understand is because we are taught not to. So imagine a couple discussing what to stop investing in so that they can pay their bills. Now, add a young child into that conversation, or even a high schooler such as myself. It doesn't seem like an appropriate place for this child to voice their opinion, does it? Well, what if that child is affected by whatever decision this couple makes? What if it messes up their daily life and routine? What if the family has to move? Doesn't the child get a voice in the conversation then? When my family moved from Detroit, Michigan, I didn't fully understand why, but I was given a chance to voice my concerns and ask any questions I had. My parents discussed everything with me. So, first of all, when moving from a big city such as Detroit, Michigan, to a small college town such as Brookings, South Dakota, I didn't know what to expect. Especially when, because I was living in a big city, I had thought Dakotas meant 1800 prairie dresses and bonnets, and I was a huge fan of Little House on the Prairie at that time. So honestly, what did you expect of me? Clearly, my parents weren't much help. But as of last month, we figured out that that's not the type of pioneers we were. Took long enough. But we figured out we're modern-day pioneers. And as of next week, we'll be moving into an eco-friendly homestead, or the first passive net zero home in the Dakotas. It's actually in Thank you. It's actually an infill project, it's basically built in an established neighborhood as well, which is something that Governor Burgum talked about yesterday. So, just as I will be moving, I quickly learned that kids in Brookings have parents at the college, SDSU, and they could move anytime. Although they would be moving states, such as I did from Michigan to South Dakota, and not just home like I will now. However, it shocked me that a lot of the kids were told the week they were moving that they had to pick up, leave, and start an entirely new life in a place they had probably never heard of or seen before. I would feel like my cats. We can't exactly tell them that we're moving, and all they know is they're placed in a crate, and when the crate next opens up, they're in an entirely new environment. So I feel privileged to have parents who discuss everything with me, especially at dinner each night. And we discuss world problems, and we like to see all the perspectives, no matter how young or old a person is. So we also do this when we have guests over. And we don't always agree, but we know that we don't have to, because no one is wrong or right. Instead of my parents telling me that I'm wrong, they often have me explain why I feel a certain way. And then they'll explain why they had come to a certain conclusion as well. Usually, I do come to a different conclusion. And it may be because I'm still learning, but it's also because I have an entirely different take on the world as a youth. I wasn't told I had to believe in a higher group of beings or in a God, but I was exposed to many different types of religions to form my own opinion. Some of these include Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And honestly, I'm still not sure what to believe. I've learned so much from just these childhood discussions, and I believe that our childhood is actually our best time to learn. It's a time when the brain is still trying to comprehend all the knowledge that's being thrown at us. I believe that the people who teach us this information are the farmers of our heart and soul. My farmers happen to be my parents. Dig, dig down in my heart, plant a seed for change to start. Water it, watch it bloom and grow. By spring my heart will surely glow. So I believe that this knowledge becomes the foundation of many principles we learn to live by when we grow up. Someday, we as youth are the adults that make the decisions for our town, our country, and possibly for the youth that grow up during our adulthood. When making these decisions, we may fall back to the principles which we were once taught and figure out what was wrong from right then. Forming new opinions when already taught a certain way can be very difficult, just like a bad habit. One issue that I've picked up throughout the years is actually how people basically look at a decision that someone has made in the community and only think about how it's going to affect them. They don't really think about how it's going to affect another person. And basically one of those people that we tend to forget are our youth. Even I'm guilty of this. But without giving youth a proper voice in the community, it's much harder for our voices and opinions to be heard. So at some point, I just decided enough is enough. I said, I'm tired and I'm stressed and I'm over all this mess, and I just want this to be over. However, the tricky part was figuring out how to make my case. I'm a youth too. It would be just as difficult. So eventually, I figured out that there's an organization known as TED, or Technology, Engineering, and Design. So this organization actually allows community members to submit applications, and if those applications are approved, they can organize a TEDx event of their own. So I always spoke about doing it, but I never really decided to. That was until 2016, which was a year and a half after we moved. So I wrote an application, and I think one day before submitting, I told my parents, and there was a lot of shock and excitement. However, it was more shocking when it was actually approved, and I think all of that kind of dawned on us. And sure, it was still exciting, but that excitement and shock quickly turns to stress. I'm sure many of you know. But the good news was I was able to hold the first TEDx Pioneer Park Kids, which ended up being the first youth-organized TEDx youth event in the history of South Dakota. So the first year, we weren't approved for live speakers. However, we could have performances during the breaks to entertain the attendees. Some of these performances included a Native American hoop dancer and a world champion yo-yo master who won the competition at age 11. So his name was John Naram. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he's actually from North Dakota. So after the talks, we actually were able to plant flowers in a plot to represent the blooming and blossoming of new ideas. In the beginning, this is what it looked like. And a month after, oh dear, I think there's a little bit of trouble with the slides, but a month after, this is what it looked like. So I feel like the first year was a bit of an introduction to the kids about what TED is and how a TEDx talk is different from any other talk, such as my fear of a high school lecture. I think it also gave them time to get inspired and think about what they wanted to talk about and what they wanted to share in future years. So after the first event, I was asked to talk at TEDx Brookings. I was asked to talk about change in a small town and the importance of it. Perhaps opening up to new youth leadership ideas in the community would bring more people to the small town. I think Governor Burgum actually talked about that yesterday. Like, why go to North Dakota? What's even in North Dakota? But if we have opportunities like these for the youth, perhaps more people will want to come. More people will want to be able to use these opportunities. So the second year approached quite quickly. But this year, we were approved for live speakers. It was my pathway to show the community a child's potential. I wanted to showcase all the youth who had an idea that could change the community. It was time for the leaders of tomorrow to use their voice and change our community for the better. So I created an application and I reviewed many youth before selecting 3 official speakers. Jacob York, a middle schooler who started a local newspaper. Serena Ann, a high schooler who created a Brookings math group, which basically engaged and helped youth improve math skills through summer sessions at the public library. And finally, Alex Gray, a South Dakota State University student who entered a design challenge with a team and created the world's fastest bike. And you can find their talks on YouTube under TEDx Pioneer Park Kids. And actually, I see many talented youth in the audience tonight, and I hope that you're inspired to look up TEDx Pioneer Park Kids and hopefully look out for details on how to apply to speak. So, after 2 successful years, I was asked to speak here at this amazing Main Street Summit. I was asked to raise awareness about youth voices. My goal from the beginning. I just had to follow that path, oh, wherever it took me from here. Find a light in the dark, 'cause the light in the dark, oh, the light in the dark would soon appear. So if I had painted the canvas with TEDx Pioneer Park Kids and restored it with TEDx Brookings, perhaps it's time to put a frame around it and hang it up. During TEDx Brookings, there was another talk by a youth advocate named Jaixai Reineke. She mentioned her experience with youth leaders in Norway. So the government in Norway actually has a treaty known as the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, or UNCRC. One article in specific states that all children have the right to voice their opinions and be heard in all matters concerning them. With this, Norway has made a friendly and productive society for their youth. And I think it'd be wonderful to take this into account and possibly see what we can do to help our youth communities. Another example of leadership opportunities opening up is something a nonprofit in Rhode Island decided to do, known as What Kids Can Do, WKCD, decided to do. So they actually flew out people to a small village in Tanzania, and they interviewed children and helped kids write a book. Each student had one essay in the book, and when it was published, people said that they learned of simple things we take for granted and how much we have to appreciate. WKCD also posts several stories of initiatives youth have taken and opportunities that have opened up in order for youth to get their voice out there. Overall, their main focus is to prove the importance of youth voices. In Pakistan, there was something similar. There's a National Youth Council. It's a youth organized program that allows kids to voice their opinions, and it helps to find ways to get youth voices out there in their community. It hopes to prove that youth voices are needed in our community and we need more opportunities. So I believe there's a pattern here. Youth voices are being portrayed all over the world. Many countries are taking action. And I believe it's time for the US to open up to more youth leadership opportunities as well. So, I don't know about you, but my best ideas come to me either in the shower or during my sleep. So, since I think of all of my ideas after dark, I like to think of my ideas come to me when the sky is awake. It doesn't seem to make sense, right? Well, hear me out. In day, only one star is visible. It may light up the entire planet, but it's one star. However, at night, there are more stars visible than anyone could ever count. It seems as if the sky is exploding with so many unique ideas. It's like looking into a crowd of people like I am now. Each one is unique, and each one stands out. Think of the sun as one idea. Currently, we're stuck in day. we only see one perspective. We need to become the night sky with a million different ideas. Therefore, I believe that night is when the sky is truly awake. I believe that this is a perfect analogy of how one person may think differently from another, whether that be youth versus adult, adult versus adult, or youth versus youth. Everyone has a different opinion on how the world works and how empty or full the glass is. By bringing together all of our ideas, I believe we can see all of the stars in the sky. We can dance along with Gemini and see the stars in your eyes, gallop through with Capricorn to the moon, and where stars are born, oh, where stars are born. Or, in this case, stars represent our ideas. So, after sleeping on it, I decided this was the perfect platform to share an idea I've been planning to propose to the Brookings City Council. Based on personal experience with youth leaders in our community and youth voices, I will actually be meeting with the Brookings City Council on December 10th. And I hope to start this initiative elsewhere. But based off of what I've heard from youth voices in our community and also learning about the different initiatives that other countries have taken, I propose that we start a youth city council. Each position that would normally be fulfilled by an adult in government would also be fulfilled by a selected youth member. For example, there would be one adult mayor and one youth mayor. Of course, there would have to be some limitations, but the main point is to give youth a voice in the community and open up new leadership skills to them. I also hope to prepare youth for politics that they will later have to deal with in their life, such as better understanding when voting what choice they will benefit from the most. In engaging youth in our community, I believe that parents and older generations will also further engage and listen to local politics more carefully and closely. When looking for these selected youth, I believe it's important that we have a panel mixed with youth and adults, so we get all perspectives. And of course, there'd be an application before the panel as well. Applications and interviews are always used for jobs. And I believe that in giving youth this opportunity, it will better prepare them for later in life when perhaps they apply for a job and are interviewed. By preparing every kid to make a difference in our world, our society will slowly become a better place. I'm sure you've all seen the issues that youth deal with today and what we'll eventually have to solve when we grow up. But instead of waiting around, I believe it's time to take action now. And we can't just listen to youth when traumatic events occur. With giving youth a voice in the community come different opinions and ways to solve problems. So I will actually be holding an activity tomorrow called Practical Strategies for Empowering Youth, and it will be at 9:30 a.m. It's a little bit of a workshop, a little bit of an activity, and we'll need both youth and adults there. So I hope to see many of you there. But before the activity, I would like to put our brains to work tonight and maybe collect some data to see the difference between a youth's perspective and an adult's perspective, or their different solutions. So if you'd all be so kind as to open the app located on your devices and take the link survey, or you may just pull out your phones and type in this link and possibly take the survey there. It's designed for unique answers, so please think creatively, think outside of the box. And then when you're done, you may press submit. And I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to thank Governor Burgum as well as Miss Emily Brown for this amazing opportunity. And before I leave tonight, I'd like to leave you with some final thoughts. You hear me through the screams of the hurricane. You listen when the floods carry me away. But you suddenly go deaf when you're pulling the trigger. Stop talking natural disasters, you're the real killer. You hear me when the fire's burning me through. You listen when the earthquake rumbles out the blue. But you didn't hear my voice through the silence before all of that came true. Oh, tell me what to do. Oh, now tell me what to do. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much.
very much
You get a
for
standing
this
ovation. Come on out here. This is Lieutenant
See,
Governor
you're
Brent
awesome.
Stanford.
I introduced you. See, you did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you very much.
Inspiring.
That was fantastic. Guys, I thank you for, it's a blessing that you're here and sharing that message. And we're so inspired. Next up, Brent and I are doing the Main Street Awards, and we just decided we're down there because we're both going to have parts, and then Brent is going to sing all of his award nominations. So that's a
Please
final
do.
piece of inspiration for us. But thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much for this.
9:30 tomorrow morning. Catch more of it.
Thank you.